So, Namaste, Sat Shri Akal, Adab, and hello everyone. Welcome to Protogonos. We are your host Bhanu Srivastava and Anand Swaroop, co-founder of this podcast, where we bring conversations with artists whose practices expand the way we think about art, society, and ourselves. Today, we are joined by Hector Canonge, an interdisciplinary artist, curator, cultural producer, and educator whose work spans performance art, multimedia installations, dance, social practice, and public interventions. Born in Argentina, raised in Bolivia, trained in United States, Actors practice engages with themes of identity, migration, gender, memory, and transformation. His work often merges ancestral traditions with contemporary gestures, creating spaces where history, the body, and the belonging collide. Through exhibitions, performances, and collaborations across continents, Hector has built a body of work that transcends borders, reminding us that art can be both intimate and collective, ritualistic and revolutionary. In this episode, we will explore Hector's journey, his practice, and the ideas that continue to shape his work. Hectors, we are glad to have you here.
Thank you, Banu. Thank you, Anand. It's a real pleasure to be connected and to be part of Protogonos in this invitation that you had for me. I'm really happy to join you.
Yeah, we are also excited to deep dive into the conversation with you. It's been long awaited that we wanted to have you on this platform to look at deeply into your practice. So we'll begin. Actor, you describe yourself as a multidisciplinary artist working across media, technology, performance, and physical environments. Could you share with us how this journey began for you?
How the journey began for me as an accident. Yeah. The accidental artist. I Well, they describe me as a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, intermedia, multidisciplinary artist. I am an artist. That's the way I would describe myself. I'm an artist, educator, and cultural producer or curator. And I've been working like that for a number of years now. And it all started um, right when I was doing work in school, finishing my graduate work. And really, I was not thinking about becoming an artist. Um, in my background, in terms of the fields of study, I study comparative literature. I study cinema, filmmaking, and digital technologies. And I was doing a thesis project about um, social conditions in the mines of Bolivia in terms of how that kind of adjusted with the language, with the using of native languages. And when I proposed my thesis, it was more of a visual rather than a literary critical thesis. And they told me, well, this really is not a thesis for comparative literature. It applies more to visuals because you have a lot of things that are visual. And then, so I started working with video and documentary work. And out of that need of continue my development, I started also exploring digital technologies, digital media. And I was not joking when I said accident, because I received a grant to explore communications media, developing this environment, virtual environment, online environment to collect stories of immigrants in New York City. particularly Hispanic immigrants. And while I was doing the project called Ciudad Transmóvil or Transmóvil City, I was discovered or I was invited by a museum, the Queens Museum of Art here in New York, to participate in the biennial. So I had no idea. Well, my project was very innovative at that time. We're talking about 2008. Yeah, 2007, 8. There was no social media, but yet my project was creating the notion of collaborative narratives, um, collaborative input in order to create stories of immigration, particularly, immigration that dealt with Hispanic people in the US or in New York in particular. So I put the museum upside down. Of course, they gave me a floor, they gave me a whole beautiful space, a gallery, and I requested this, and that's that only my imagination worked that way. We did, yeah, many weeks working on the project to make it work on an actual site. And so the the funding of this prototype of communication devices, etc., was launched publicly, and that's the whole thing just started there, and then suddenly I was in this wonderful and not so wonderful sometimes world of museum galleries and exhibitions and doing more work related to that. That's how it started. So I come also from being behind the camera, making I made documentaries, I made films, I wrote literary criticism. So being just at the desk or behind the camera to actually being out there exploring what we call in English, relational aesthetics, working with
Mhm.
issues through technology. Yeah. And for a number of years, I worked in that. There's no performance yet. There's no performance art. Uh, so I dedicated my time to that, to produce projects, installations, immersive environments with the participation of people and with technology, with, barcode devices, sensor devices, lots of coding, computer generated imagery, generative art. Um, and I discover as I went. Um,
Uh-huh.
as I,
What time period was this exactly?
we're talking about 2000 and let's say it was a little bit earlier. I think the museum experience was 2005. Yeah, 2005.
Okay. Amazing. And was there like a particular turning point that made you move toward performance and new media art instead of staying within more traditional forms?
Okay. A particular, I was doing new media to begin with.
Right. Okay.
I graduate, after doing the literature and cinema, I moved to, so academically, I'm basically trained in new media technologies, new media communications. So I apply that to the social aspects. And in that, I also was thinking about the aesthetics of presenting work, the community related to that. A turning point on that is 2010, 11, when I presented this project at a dance space that was turning
Mhm.
into a gallery, and they commissioned me to do a piece with my body because it was the dance space.
Right.
Oh, I have no. Again, suddenly I was put in to do a project that involved dance, okay, or movement, corporal movement. I had considered before, before studying, when I was out of high school, I wanted to be a dancer. Uh, yeah, I did some contemporary dance training, but I couldn't continue because I developed rheumatic fever. At short, um,
Right.
But my body somehow kept all that training. And
Okay.
when I started doing the work with this gallery, this dance space, a project came out, and that's my very first project in corporal movement called Esquema Corporeal, politics of masculine embodiment, and how identity is reflected. And I was using technology, and for me, it was not a performance, nor it was a dance piece. I call it live installation. I was working with live installation as a new media artist doing this, but it was the first project that put my body at the center of creation, at the center of being also the object, the subject and the object of creation.
Uh-huh. Okay.
That's really fascinating. Since your practice went so many directions, like as you have said, let's talk a little about how you choose your tools and methods. You often integrate technology, the live performance, from barcodes to touch screens, interactions. How do you decide what mediums or format best solve a particular idea? I mean, this is a very basic question for the artist like who are struggling with the mediums. So in case of your practice, how do you choose mediums? I mean,
Mhm. Okay, I decide in medium. I mean, back then when I started, because that's what I knew. I knew how to work with the tools, the new media tools. I knew how to do code, read coding and do coding. I knew how to work with film, and I knew how to reference literary texts, right? So it was, I didn't think much of it, just came naturally with each project. What I needed to put together, and how I was able to work with a very specific project. So one of the examples is Golden Cage. Golden Cage was another big project that, using new media technologies and my body. This time I was more comfortable saying that I was doing, movement, corporal work, but not yet performance art. I was staying away from that word because I didn't know it. I didn't want to adopt it. And I thought that somehow performance art was not as serious as working with new media arts, which I was, right? So for me, new media arts was the form, the way of approaching the work that I was doing in contemporary art. So, seeing body sensor devices, I made this project where I was in the gallery, butt naked, and the only thing that was triggered was this idea of a lighting cage. It's called the Golden Cage. So it was a cage that reacted to my body temperature, and it references the inadequacy of many migrants of being in another place. And that comes actually from a Persian poem, written by Shrirat Ray, that alludes to the golden cage is my captivity, where I cannot move freely, although I move within the cage, but I'm not free at all. And that's the situation of many migrants in many places. They have everything, materials. I mean, in terms of the physical, they have materials. They can buy anything, but yet they cannot go back to their home country. So that was the idea,
Right.
and it was a durational work. I performed it, or I was inside the installation for about 7 hours a day in the gallery, and just waiting for visitors to come in, waiting for and when the visitors will come in, either I would bring, my body into movement, just like an animal, like a cage animal. And when I was not doing these rounds inside the cage, I was writing. I was writing on rice paper stories of immigrants that I have heard, stories of immigrants that I constructed, stories of immigrants that people have told me. By that time, I had collected a lot of these stories, and that was also accumulated like scrolls. These scrolls are right now in Madrid as it was collected by someone, and so that was the result of this project. So I work in project. I will with this idea of projects,
Uh-huh.
idea of new media. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
to add in this, dialogue further, like how do you view the role of audience as co-creators, witnesses, or like participants? Because so far, performance, cinema, and immersive artworks, like it's more of like how you has considered audience as an integral part of your voice. Like, what do you say about?
Sorry, I didn't get the question right too clear. Can you repeat again?
Yeah, I mean, how do you view the role of the audience as co-creators, witnesses, or participants?
Uh, to me, audiences are participants in the projects that back then I produced. Right now, my body of work has shifted tremendously. But back then, with projects such as um, this project about street vendors in the city, the project working with the school children in Argentina, the project working in in other countries with people involve more of a relational aesthetics, where there are participants and they complete the work, but not necessarily they are collaborating to create a piece of work. So my work is authorial work. I place all the elements um, that are available, and based on that, I invite participants to experience um,
Me-
to experience the project, to experience the environment, to experience what I want to tell. Right. So there's that distinction that I make. So participants are participants; they're active participants. Sometimes the participants are not necessarily active; they're just passive.
All right. So that sort of brings us to the performance art itself. And um, one of the most striking aspects of your practice, in fact, like in your live art projects such as Golden Cage and SUR, um, endurance and ritual and movement play a central role. So, what does the body mean to you as a site of performance?
Yeah, the two projects that you mentioned are two examples of durational work that I've done. One is, here in the period where I was still exploring whether I was or not a performance artist, and whether or not performance art was something that I wanted to do,
Yes.
ventures into. So, um, after working for other projects, doing other projects, and also by going to see the exhibition of, particularly, and I want to mention this, Marina Abramovic at MoMA, that opened my eyes, and then I realized that I was doing performance art. That's what I was wanted to say, live.
Performance. Which performance did you see of Maria Abramovic?
Well, it's the retrospective of Marina Abramovic,
Okay.
right?
No.
The artist is present, yeah. So at that point, the artist is present. I went to see the work. I started reading about performance art. I was not quite convinced. I was not quite convinced until that particular exhibit and the possibilities that opened for me. And I had done already durational work, but again, I was reluctant to say I am a performance artist. I was doing live installation art, right? I was the installation. So sur is another SUR. You refer to SUR is sur. Sur in Spanish means south. So the I returned to South America after living most of my um, life outside of South America. I returned in 2012, and after I got soaked in Latin America, Latin American identity, etc., I went back to the world with the performance Sur, which is South. And it's also a big construct. It's a big project which was presented in the US, in Europe, Asia, where it deals with identity. It deals with the notion of identity devoid of technology. There's no technology.
Okay.
So there's a point also in my practice where I draw the line and I say no more technology. And that's when I was invited to Amfar. Amfar is the Turkish biennial, where I had all these gadgets and everything and ended up being confiscated. at the airport. So I didn't go into the biennial with all these elements, yet I managed to performance art piece devoid of technology. And that's at one point when I said, uh, I am doing performance art and I'm not sure I need as much technology now. So Project Sur is I think, one of the projects that has that component, which there's no technology at all. There is just my body and referencing to all these issues of identity. My identity. I'm talking about my identity, how I transmitted in the world that I was starting to also explore, right? Where do I fit in?
Mhm.
In addition to your performance art journey, performance art is often seen as ephemeral. What do you think gives it permanence? Memory, documentation, or the transformation of those who witness it?
Yeah, performance art is ephemeral, right? But in it is ephemeral because it happens at one particular moment in time and at one particular place. And after that, well, it's done. And if the public has experienced it, um, yes, they get the experience. If they haven't, then they missed it. However, there is and something that is important for me is the documentation of my performance art projects. Visual documentation in terms of video and photographs, and also the physical collection of matter, of objects, or the remnants of the performance, right? The remnants. So there are the objects or pieces of, of objects that are left. And that is also collecting those remnants. So the ephemerality of performance is in the act itself. However, the remnants and the documentation stays as a reference. I believe that it is important to document one's work, especially now. Um, I believe that it is important to have a video or pictures and the objects or the remnants, the materials
Right.
over, so we can have that as a testament of our work, as a testament
Yes,
of what we've done.
definitely. And how do you balance like clarity of aesthetics with the open-endedness of live audience engagement?
I think about the process of creation itself when I'm conceptualizing a piece, and I don't produce performance art pieces that are random or that will happen, without preparation. A lot of people mistakenly consider performance art to be something that is out of a moment, that is, um, without any type of rules, without any type of sketches, without any type of guidance or guides. Um, and if they do it that way, that's fine. But um, I don't practice my performance art projects in that manner. I'm carefully elaborating from where it's going to take place, what is going to be done, how it's going to be, who I'm doing it with, since you mentioned the audience, and who and the where. Okay, so performance art piece or project that could best suit India, for example, what I did last year in Bhubaneswar, behind, this pond below this magnificent offering tree, wouldn't be the same if I do it in China or Latin America, because the conditions are different, and I think the appreciation of people of that particular piece will be totally different. In Bhubaneswar, India, was contextualized in that particular area, that for the particular people that were present. Now, if I take that to Calcutta, even though it's India still, in Kolkata, the readings of that piece would be different. So there would be signs, there could be elements that will speak, of what the performance is, but in the whole, it will not resonate the same way that would resonate in a specific site. So that's how I think I'm very much an artist of process. I'm very, I create process oriented, but also in terms of the situation and the site, the location, how the location speaks to me, how the elements to me. A brick in, from Delhi might have similar looks as the brick that is used in Peru in South America, but conditions under which the brick was produced, they're different, and that would also inform my piece.
Cities and technology often shape your works. Your project often explore urban issues, migration, and identity. How do cities shape your artistic language so far?
I wouldn't just think about cities. I think of location, territory, space. It doesn't have to be a city. It's more of the
I mean, you most of the time that you stay in city like New York City, it's a like big metropolitan city. So anyhow the unknowingly the contribution and the effect comes into the practice. How do you consider it? And if you recall, or like you primarily initiate like you go with the completely with the side that you work with.
Okay, I live in big cities, whether it's in Berlin or whether it's in New York City or whether it's in Buenos Aires or Santa Cruz de la Sierra in Bolivia. So those are big cities. And what I do is I have to be surrounded by artists, by culture, by spaces that promote this the diffusion of art and projects. So I need the environment of the city to be able to do that, and the resources that some cities have. However, my work is not relegated to just being in a city. I could well be, or explore um, different situations in a small towns or villages around the world, and be able to extract what impacts me as a creator, what impacts me as a human being, what impacts me as the artist, and be able to shape something that I have in mind, thinking about who inhabits that particular territory or space, because mm, I create performance art projects for audiences. In that sense, I think of people when I'm creating that and what's relevant to them and how they will be able to approximate their views or their feelings or their appreciation for, or not appreciation sometimes, right? Of might be done. Last year, for example, I was in Santi Niketan in the forest with this project, and in the project, not in this in not in the city, right? Away from, and not in the university, away from it, right? Uh, in basically open space in the forest of Santi Niketan, or when I was in Togo in Africa, in Kalimé, which is also jungle, and how those territories spoke to me, and how my body also could inhabit the space, how my body could relate to what was present, the jungle of Kalimé or the forest of Santi Niketan. Now, if I'm moved to Berlin, now what do I do in Friedrichstraße or Alexanderplatz? So I have to think about that. I have to think again. I don't I I stay in my practice away from just letting things happen, right? Don't things don't just happen. But it is important for me then to be always connected to big cities, because after all, I have to make a living. I have to be involved in the cultural aspect, the artistic production, the marketing of cities. But at the same time, when the opportunity arises and they invite me to do presentations here and there that aren't necessarily big cities, then I'm open to that.
And generally, like, you address contemporary socio-political issues through your work. And do you think that new media art has a unique ability to address these contemporary socio-political issues compared to the traditional forms of art?
I'm a little bit. I stepped out of new media for a while, uh, for a number of years. I don't think new media art or new media technologies is the answer to the social problems of the world. However, it helps us understand other situations that we may have with technology. Okay, so what is new media now? In 3 years will be old media. What was new media when I was doing new media? Think of the barcode. When I did this like barcode, it was a wow, big innovation. What a discovery! And now you get the QR code. I was one of the first artists to be using QR code. Right? It's a whole notion of codification, the codification of human beings, with a project about AIDS. I did a project about AIDS and HIV with the codification of individuals. That was before the QR existed, before the barcodes were being used um, for other purposes than just clothing or products, right? So in that sense, new media moves, but what is new media now will be old media tomorrow. Now, you mentioned traditional art. I'm not a painter, so I cannot answer from traditional forms of visual arts or fine arts. So I'm not a painter. I'm not a sculptor. I am not a illustrator. I don't have that kind of training. Okay. And I admire people that work with painting and painters, for example, or do sculptures. In Santiniketan, I'm surrounded by sculpture and all these incredible artists that are working with traditional methods of painting for contemporary art. It just blew my mind.
Right.
Um, so I don't know what traditional or how traditional art would be in in me, because I don't do. Maybe one day I'll explore painting as you traditional think of a canvas in your hand and the brushes. Maybe one day I will. But I've started a new series of painting, but those are paintings with corporal action. And the canvases are totally different. That's one of the next projects that I'm working on for an exhibition. So, but it's totally different. It's also untraditional way of looking at or seeing the canvas, and how how the body can actually produce, right? Some type of referential painting. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where that's going. With also the use of drones. So here's the technology. Okay, and now we have artificial intelligence, and see what we can do. Many artists are saying, "Oh, artificial intelligence is going to take over." Graphic designers are like shaking because they say, if one command could just, take care of all the design aspects and everything, where we will be. We will adapt. I mean, we adapted to what? We adapted to video. When artists were saying video is going to kill filmmakers, no one will be making films anymore, blah, blah, blah. We need the black and white and the graininess of films. Well, we started doing video, digital video, and that's where it jumps. So we, as artists, as people, we adapt to these different technologies, and those technologies carry with them also social baggage, social aspects that affects people. And look what's happening now, right? The consumption of our technologies with the batteries. Where is the power coming for our battery? We don't think about it, right? For our cell phone, it's coming lithium reserves all over the world that people, that's the new oil reserves. So technology and its, aftermaths. Yeah. And creation also with technology.
Yeah, those are really great insights.
Mhm.
Uh, since you have since you have worked internationally, we would love to bring in an Indian perspective as well. You have came to India as well. Like uh, you have worked internationally from your perspective. How do you see the evolution of performance art in India compared to the West?
Compared to,
Compared to the West, performance art in India.
okay, or compared to in terms of the West. I wouldn't compare it because there is something in the West and there is something in the East, right? And it both have their own concerns, aesthetics, problems, and issues. But one thing that I see in performance art in India is very vibrant and it's live and it's full of also specks of the ancient traditions and the heritage. And that's something that resonates within me because when I started and when I decided to do performance art, um, I also incorporated those aspects of uh, the ancestral baggage or ancestral weight that we carry. And of course, I carry many because I come from different regions in the world. Mm, you know, my background is very mixed. So I just and that's why I think India to me is home because I can relate to what's happening there. Um, I've heard many comments of saying, "Oh, that's so theatrical. That's irrelevant. It's not performance art." Hey, performance art is fluid, and performance art doesn't have a formula. Every artist approaches performance art as she sees, to work with what the artist wants to say. So if an artist wants to integrate, these ancestral rituals, why not? Ancestral dance, why not? After all, performance art is the integration, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, if you want to call it, uh, a field of expression, right? If you come from if you come from philosophy, you can well adjust all of that and adapt to performance art. So performance art in India is very rich, and I'm always amazed to see and come in contact with artists in India who with almost no resources, and I've been honest about it because they're doing it. They're doing it, and they use a can of I don't know, a can of fish, a can of sardines, right?
Mm.
Uh, to do a piece, or a sack of worn potatoes or mud, etc. And that speaks to what I do as well, because that's what I use. I don't need, and that's what I said. I've already transitioned from this high tech stuff of using all these gadgets around me, videos, blah blah blah, because sometimes they're just too much. They're too noisy. Um, but rather being in the essence of what the body needs right at that moment, and how the body can relate to those materials. I was in Kolkata. In Kolkata, I collected purposely some of these fabrics that they used to build, the big structures for painting when they're constructing. And I asked for more in Parijbar. They're ropes basically, but made out of fabric, of cheap fabric, and the colors just blew up my mind because I happened to be at the they were preparing the Bollywood, like the big event in Bollywood, and I was there just a few days before just to get myself, to oriented, and I saw all these workers, construction workers, using the threads and the bamboo to build these ladders, right? And for me, that immediately bamboo and the threads, the ropes spoke. Not only for Bhubaneswar, but then I had a exhibition solo project in Bolivia, and I carry with from India all the way across the ocean to the subcontinent to South America, my precious strings of rope from India that was used by people, by real people, that they had given it to me. And then over there, I had to look for bamboo, right, to construct the piece that I wanted. So that is the correlation. And that also speaks of my inspiration in not only in the quotidian, day-to-day aspects of life, of a region, of a place, but also how artists nurture my experience. I was in Sri Lanka, and there was this artist I always remember. She made a performance with fish, tiny fish, and she had sewn the fish as a dress. Can you imagine the amount of work that were in there? The only thing she did, she stood at the entrance of the place where we performed. That's all. The smell was intense. The look was incredible. It was this golden figure because they were golden fish, um, tiny little ones, that she had, worked like putting it together for many months, okay, as a dress. So experiences like that, or how in China there was this artist who only used these petals of local flowers to build this incredible experience. Yeah.
That's amazing. So, talking about the bigger picture, like the purpose of art itself, for you, what is the ultimate purpose of art? Is it personal expression or political intervention or social transformation? How do you see your art contributing to society? Is it about raising questions, healing, activism, or something else?
Well, that's a heavy philosophical question. Oh, wow. Okay. A couple of weeks ago, I was in a conference online with, Buenos Aires. And the idea is, and I think they were thinking about science and art, how science contributes to human development, and how art may or may not. And one critic and one the philosopher, critic, etc., said, well, both create, right? Both create to help human beings in many things, social aspects. And so making science is art, and making art is science. So I waited until this person finished, and I said, no, it's not. They're not the same thing. They're not the same thing. When you do art, you're doing art with a specific purpose of, I don't know, it has a very, very specific goal or objective, and you use scientific methods to do that. When you are making art as a creator, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen at the end. There might be a process, yes, but how that's going to be received, adapted by people, right? So the role of art is in society. I believe it is to open possible channels of understanding and reflection, understanding among other human beings, understanding of situations, understanding of other coordinates in the world, of other lands, other territories, other messages. Not in a didactic way, because then we will be doing the scientific method of saying this is how it has to be, right? Art, I think, gives us that, opens up the possibilities of interpretation, the possibilities of, again, reflecting on what we are seeing and how we are experiencing. So making art is, especially in performance art, and I always say this, is a way of purging my own demons. And what I mean with that is that I'm not possessed. I don't need exorcism. Although sometimes I think I do need exorcism. some friends of mine tell me, like, oh, you're impossible. We can't deal with you anymore. Yeah, sometimes I do need exorcism by third parties, but if I do it myself, I can induce this type of exorcism of what is really deep inside of me. Consciously. Consciously, I want to address a theme. I want to address a concern. I want to address a situation. Unconsciously, I think we all carry the experiences, our own background, our own time on this earth. And it comes out. It comes out. And I also believe of this idea of the ancestral, right? We don't necessarily express it knowingly, but our bodies, I think, recognize it. It's interesting how I started with, once I was doing performance art, I remember a curator, and this happened in Berlin, came to see my work, and she said, "Oh, that's so wonderful what you did. What did you train in Buto dance?" I said, "What? I'm sorry, can you repeat? What did you just say?" That was what he said. Buto. Have you heard of Buto dance? And I said, No, I don't know what Buto is. He said, I thought you had practiced or you had trained in Buto dance. And back then, I'm talking about 2015, 16. I said, no, I don't. I don't. I have contemporary dance background, and I did some pieces in contemporary dance, but not Buto. But she recognized something that my body had or was expressing. I was not conscious of it. Then
Right.
my first incursion in Buto was in Berlin, and then in New York, and then in Japan, then in South America, and I became a student of Buto dance. And my body was just doing it as a kind of memory, was calling it up. I don't know. Again, I don't want to. I don't want to seem or sound too esoteric, but there was something there, and
Right.
there is something there that when I do Buto practice or Buto dance, I am not me. I'm sort of like something else comes over, takes over, and I'm transformed. People say my facial, everything is just transformed. They say that it's somebody else, but Hector Canonge. Yeah. So that expresses also this idea that I share with you of the ancestral. How, if we are open, these channels could, emerge. And if we really think about it and we want to explore it, I think the possibility is there. There is a reason why, all these um, circumstantial things happen to us. As I said, the accident of becoming, involved in the arts, the accident of doing performance art, the accident of, are they really accidents though? Or was there something else organized so I could bump into all these fields and territories and being exploring, right? One thing though that has always been with me, so if there is a thread, kind of like putting all these experiences together, is the word, language. Language. I find such a pleasure and find myself driven to language and literature and in the writing. Yeah, whether it's in English, Spanish, French, or German, it's just I'm there. But at the same time, I can't, forfeit the other ones coming there. And that informs my practice. So that informs my references. Sometimes, and I read some critics also saying, it is too cerebral because he's referencing the philosophy of Wittgenstein. Or, oh yeah, he kind of talked about, this neo-indigenous writing of Peru or the Andes. Well, why not? Why not? Yeah.
Yeah. That was really interesting. Actually raised a lot of questions within me.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you give to young Indian artists who experimenting with the performance and new media today?
My advice to young Indian artists and young artists in general, is to continue the exploration. We never cease to explore. Continue the exploration, continue developing your methods, your techniques, your approach to what you want to express. You know, read a lot, inform yourselves, and think what you want to communicate. Think what you want to say, whether it's through paintings, sculptures, performance art, photography, video. Any type of art, or in writing as well. Is to find that voice within you. And if you don't find it, keep searching for it. And if you don't search it, if you don't find that one voice, it's okay to have different voices. I move from different realms. I move in the realm of dance. I move in the sphere of the poetics, writing poetry, reading books. So I move in the realm of, conceptual installation art, performance art. That doesn't mean that I'm a completely, you know, without direction. I inhabit different worlds. I inhabit different spheres, and every sphere is nurturing me as a human being. Every sphere is feeding what I need to have to exist as a thinking person. And I need that. But that's my recommendation as well. Don't just go, I'm going to be the performance artist, and all I want to do is performance. If you say that, I think you are limiting yourself. And art is not limiting oneself. It's actually opening up the possibilities.
And as you said, you talked about demons, and I think we all had those. um, not the similar ones, not the same ones, but yeah, similar. Sometimes very different. And do you think that for an artist, different art forms, can actually help them cleanse their consciousness and actually bring out this more pure or higher version of themselves, and remove these demons?
If we would think art as the tool or mechanism to release demons, we wouldn't have any more artists. Wouldn't have any more artists.
Sure.
I don't think it's a process as such that through arts you are, kind of cleansing yourself. On the contrary, I think many times I feel conflicted with the art that I'm producing. It's self-criticism, yes. It's self-flagellation, yes. Am I allowed to do that? Absolutely, I am. Why not? Who's telling me not to be, self-critical and not to really bang my head against the wall and saying that project could have been better if I could have thought about it more, right? So I didn't exercise any demons. I didn't. I at that one moment I would feel that I was a total failure with a particular project, but that failure will hopefully teach me to be more successful, or
Right.
to approach it in a different way. I don't know about successful or not, but to approach it differently so it satisfies me
Right.
as a creator, as an artist. And therefore also maybe if there is the implications of the wallet, of course that would satisfy my marketability, because I don't want to be, I don't want to give this the wrong impression that artists should be all romantic creators, that we are making art for art's sake. No, if we want to be professional artists, we have to think about, how do I sell my art? How do I put myself in the market? So whether it's with painting, photography, or video, they're going to recognize and maybe buy it or acquire it or give me a commission, right? So the direct financial aspect is selling, right, for someone, the buying and selling in the market. But the indirect, there are other ways that we ought to survive in this world. It is with commissions, with money that we get from fellowships, grants, et cetera, et cetera. We put it all together. But for that, we have to have the capability also of thinking, hey, I need to focus today and I'm going to write a proposal for this foundation or fellowship, which will require me a lot of work. Yes. And by doing that, a lot of work in writing or proposing something, then I'm exercising that need. eh, rather than being just inspired by the muse. That's so 19th century in my view, saying that I will only do art for art's sake, and because I am an artist, I don't want to sell myself to the gallery. Well, you know what? Selling yourself to the gallery, you're not selling your integrity. You're just
Right.
doing the thing you need to survive. And that's one thing I find, if we're talking about Indian artists and also Latin American artists and other artists um, in Asia, is that they are reluctant sometimes to that. They are reluctant of position themselves, taking the initiative of saying, "Hey, I need to eat. I need to put clothes on me. I need to support my family if I have a family. As an artist, as a full-time artist, what do I need to do? What do I need to do?" It is a very romantic way of approaching art, saying, I'll create art and I'll just be dealing with my demons, in my studio. But hey, you need ink for your drawings, you need brushes for your paint, you need paint for your paintings and canvas. How are you going to buy it, right? How are you going to buy it if you don't attempt to put yourself in the market? Now, with performance art, it's a little bit difficult. And yeah, it is difficult because there is the experience, as Banu said, and there are how the experience, because the experience is ephemeral, but there are other methods. There's photography, there's the documentation of that, and how you package that. To be able to have a package of yourself as an artist is important because you are artist after all, right? We want to be in the 21st. Hey, we are 21st century, 25 years into this century. So we have to be kind of marketable and be able to do that. Um,
Yeah.
so it is very important to think about that. Now, I spent 4 years, 5 years of schooling, let's say traditional arts, and in India, I know it's very rigorous when the young students are going to the university and studying art, and it's also rigorous anywhere in the world, and they're doing all this sculpting and painting and finding, and suddenly when they finish school, no jobs. There are no jobs, and they're artists. They've been educated, so they've been trained for 5, 6 years in schooling, right? So, is there a system there that supports the artist, or do we create one? I've always been, advocate of, if it doesn't exist, I'll create, and I think that's one of the reasons why the other part of me is a cultural producer, because if I see the need, if I have a need, I'm not going to wait for the museum or the gallery to create and to, satisfy that need. I'm going to create it. So I'm going to create a festival. I'm going to work on a project. I'm going to create, work with other artists, create an event. Okay. So that is important to realize where we are, where we position ourselves in the contemporary art market. And there are markets and there are markets, and everyone is working there and doing, we do the best as we can, but let's not forget about that. It is important.
All right. Have to be realistic.
True, true, true. I mean, this is very good. As you said, it's very hard sometimes to, position yourself. But after having this all kind of realistic, like awareness, it's needful to acknowledge yourself in terms of survival, in terms of, getting your bread and butter, along with the intellectual ideas that you have that you want to put across to the society. That's really true. That's needful.
Yes, yes, yes. It's difficult, and I consider myself blessed and lucky to have had the opportunity to experience all these different fields, and also to have had the opportunity to work in the fields, but at the same time to be able to survive and support myself in the fields, right? But that was possible because I was innovating within me, right? I was doing something that I needed to do. And if there is a causality of all these things, the thesis project in comparative literature led me to film. The film led me to digital arts. The digital arts led me to new media. And suddenly the new media brought me back to my own body. So, right. So that's kind of like a cycle. And where am I going now? Well, I don't know. I'm having my own again, the questioning. So there is no complete exorcising or the exorcism that's, and you were mentioning, they're still there. We can never get rid of them. We cannot,
Right.
we cannot. As human beings, whether you're artist or not, you do have your own things. Call it demons,
Yeah.
call it baggage, call it, traumas. We use different words for that. But we all carry and we all have to deal with it at different levels as artists or scientists or just, you know, workers or day-to-day people.
Right.
I mean, yeah, even this time, I can see a kind of uh, problem among cohort right now. Even they alienate themselves, you know, with the rest of the society. As an artist, they consider themselves very position themselves very far, very separated, that doesn't let them to, integrate, interlead with the another professions. But how like the experience of yourself is something that from you're coming from lots of different professions, occupations, and awareness of how each and single individual dialogues, brings the wholesome experience and needful dialogue into the society, and of course in front of the needful audience. So this is something very, I mean, I feel it's very needful to understand as soon as you can, because this becomes the problem sometimes. So it's very good to know like your opinions on it. I mean, as realistically you have, doing tremendous uh explorations, I will say. Yeah, not artworks, explorations. Definitely that will keep going. That's really good.
Yes, remember that, or just I want to mention that there is no formula
So
for everyone to follow in terms of their own path as creators or artists. I think we all go, and it's a process of discovery. For many, it would work best isolation, production at home, etc. For others, will be networking and building a bigger community. So again, there's no one formula for all of us to say I'm going to adhere to this or to that, or to say, hey, this is what you have to do. And sometimes in schooling is that, right? Schooling is leading you to one direction, but also schooling is as schools, universities are ways of finding yourself, because that's the only place I believe in the school, university, terrain, where you are able to explore without fear, because you are self-contained. You are sort of like in your own academic bubble. And I've always, I kind of like thank my academic upbringing for that, because it is within the academic upbringing that I was able to experiment, to explore. I knew that outside, once out of that, it would be hard, right? So in academics or in the university, I try with film production of documentaries, narratives, because I had access, for example, to the best equipment possible. So I made the 100% use of that. Out of that, I knew that I was going to have harder times, getting those equipments.
Right.
And so I think that's what schooling brings us. At the same time, on the one hand, the rigorousness of doing this and that, but on the other hand, also the openness, if we want to, right, of exploration and making mistakes. I mean, you can make mistakes more than in the real world.
Yes.
Mm, yeah.
Definitely.
And I tell that to my students also. Say, hey, make mistakes here. Don't give me a final, this is the ultimate project I'm doing. Because I will find mistakes, but it's not because I want to be the horrible, bad professor or instructor. It's because I want you to think about it.
Yeah.
It's okay to make mistakes. And when it comes to the real life also, as I said, it's okay to make mistakes, and you will not always have the best ever installation possible or the best painting ever, but you try with the next one, or the best performance ever. Maybe one performance was just so flat that no one actually looked at it, and not even the documentary people took the time to photograph or videotape it.
Yeah.
Forgotten. Okay, it's best if it's forgotten. Yeah. Yes.
So what's next for you and the field of performance art, or as you said, one of the projects you're working on? Um, we're, we're definitely looking forward to that. Sounds really interesting. But are there uh, any other things and any other directions or perspectives you're looking to explore um, in your artistic explorations?
Yeah, that's the question. It's like, what are you doing next? What's next? What's next? What if I say like nothing is next? Will you like me? Absolutely like me. Would you like me still? They always expect us to be doing something, but we're not doing anything. And I always get this question like, what are you working next? And I always I kind of joke, I say like nothing. And they get uncomfortable. Oh, really? I thought I had, and they get kind of questionable and out of shape when I say in person. I mean, when they ask me these things, especially the big, curators or galleries.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, well, I have a solo upcoming exhibition in the Amazon.
Nice.
And I'm working on that. Also, I'm just trying to recap from being, well, again, traveling. And I told you I was in Berlin, I was in Spain, I was in the north of Africa. So I'm just recouping from that right now. At the same time, never stop. Um, so I'm working on that. I just had some ideas this morning about some videos that I want to make. And I was listening to this song this morning when I was taking a shower. I don't know. I just put I put the what is it? The music on, and the song, it's like very, and you'll understand this is very Berlin beat kind of rave
All right.
techno.
Yeah.
And it says, I can't put myself to sleep. La 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 la. I can't put myself, and then they put this like, why I can't put myself to sleep? Because you think too much, because the words are always there. So I was thinking about that this morning. It's like, why couldn't I sleep well soundly last night? Because my head was just like, "Well, how am I going to shut it off?" Um, but yeah, I mean, that sometimes I'm like that, and sometimes it's just like zero. You can't get,
Yeah.
I can't get a word out of my head, nothing, it's zero blank. So I watch mindless, senseless, um, television, which is not television anymore, Netflix, you could say. So just my mind went off, random, nothing, nothing.
Until something comes.
Or sometimes nothing comes.
Yeah.
I don't just like say, and it's okay to be zero. I mean, you don't have to
Yeah.
all the time. You don't have to be producing all the time. You don't have to be writing all the time. You don't have to be doing performance all the time. Actually, I was just like that up to here with performance art. And performance art is every now, and I'm just kind of like a little bit sick of it. Performance art, performance. Every little event that I've been had a performance art presentation, and what many of those were like just oof, what were they thinking that performance art is? But again, is the fluidity of performance art, right? Is the nature of the beast in itself, right? How do we define it? How do we peg it? And performance art doesn't want to be pegged, doesn't want to be tagged, doesn't want to be. So there you go. Yeah. Oh, again with this, and I think it's happening in many of the other art expressions as well. What comes next in painting? What do we do? That has not been. I was just at PS1 last week with the New York art book fair when I arrived, and I said, okay, I have jet lag and everything, but I'm gonna go and see. I went there and I just lasted, I think, 45 minutes. I just couldn't take the crowd, the buzz, and the whole thing. I had to escape, really, go in hiding. So I've been hiding since Sunday to this morning. You don't know, hiding. Of course, yeah. Banu will probably tell me, "Oh, but you're in the big city. Why don't you?" I don't want a big. I just want to hide here in the garden. Yeah, but now I think I'm prepared. So I kind of recollected myself. The energy is there, um, and that's what New York gives me. This unrelentless, like injection of energy.
Ooh.
Berlin gives me something else, which is very, very nice, beautiful. It gives me energy, but it's quiet. And I like that about Berlin.
Yeah.
It uses me with this nice dosage of energy that doesn't punish me. But New York sometimes punishes me in terms of its energy. And so does Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires really wipes me with what I find there. Mm. So yeah, depends on the situation. But for now, yeah, that does not answer a very long question of what are your plans. Those are my plans, and yeah, I want to do a project. There's something here, art in art places that will be happening in New York in November, I believe. So they invited me to do that. I might be doing it, and yeah, that's coming.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's a typical question, but by your answer, it's clear. The journey is more important.
It always is. The journey is um, more important to get where you want to get. Sometimes and many times has happened to me that I have written about the performance and it's done. And when I go and present it, sometimes I say to myself, well, it's done already. What do I need to do? Yeah. And I think this comes from film also. I think it was Hitchcock who once said, I scripted everything, so the film is done. Frame boarded everything. So it's the storyboards. That's it. Look, storyboards. The film is done.
Yeah.
If you could condense your philosophy of art into one line for our listeners, what would it be?
If you're asking me to condense my philosophy of art into one line for listeners, followers of the program, I would say don't think of a philosophy for art because art doesn't need a philosophy to understand, to be understood, or to create, or to just be art. That would be my answer to this question, because right now we all want to philosophize about art, but what if we just leave it as is, art?
Right. Recently, we were doing this online um, kind of a workshop thing. It was like it was experimental, and it was about art as service, and we were discussing about how art doesn't have a fixed definition, and if we see if we look around, we see similar things in philosophy and spirituality. Um, and if we analyze, then we see that if we cannot bound art, then art is actually standing um, in sort of a higher standard. We can see it along with the philosophy, spirituality, and art. And that is why the more we try to understand and box it in neatly, just for ourselves, it 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 will probably cause problems.
Or it may open the minds, right?
But yeah, it's the way as well. Yeah,
Or may open possibilities, not even the possibility, but possibilities.
possibility. Right.
And
Right.
when we talk about philosophy and art, then are we talking about philosophy of art, philosophy in art, or the art of philosophy? Which one? Right. Right. And that's why it's to me, I kind of go very I navigate carefully with that. Okay. I have a philosophy for the practice of art. And if I think of the word philosophy, it's the understanding of art, then it's, well, what I do. And then that kind of philosophy, quotations, right? I would say, trying to understand what I do.
Yeah.
Creatively. Now, I don't
Right.
know if my art necessarily benefits others. And I don't think it's necessarily a field that should take care of the problems of the world. And I think art shouldn't, right? What's happening today is that everyone wants to solve the issues of the world with art. Why is my question? Why? There are other fields of human practice and development, or there are other fields in this social sciences, political sciences, in sciences that can take care of that. But yet we want to force art to do it.
Yeah.
We want to force artists to do that. We want to create this notion of art should be useful. Why? Why can art just be not useful? What does it bring
You're right.
to
Yeah.
our human development of not necessarily being that utilitarian uh, tool, utilitarian catalyst for the world? Why? Yes, art has, social, political, economic benefit. It is through art that we have accomplished many things. Think of, for example, performance, what we call today performance, right? Um, yes, there was live action before the name performance art came into vogue. Live action. It is through live action that the movements in Latin America or the movements in India, the case of India, uh, served to break from colonial subjugation, right? From colonial power. But that was something else, right? It was not necessarily just art or just performance. We could read it as performative actions, social marches, uh, demonstrations, political, events could have performative action, but to name them performance art or just art is again trying to force this other characteristic that art might not necessarily have.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Any art form I'm talking about, not just performance art, right? Yes, but Picasso was talking about Guernica with the painting, blah blah blah. Okay, it was intentional. Um, if I show this to someone who has no reference of that particular historical event, it has no relevance.
Right.
You were to read about it.
Exactly.
Someone would have to inform you that painting evokes what happened in a particular point in the globe, right? In Spain,
Right. Right.
point in history. Otherwise, it's just like, okay, pieces of squares and, shapes. Yeah. Yeah. But again, I think art it has other dimensions. And I think those dimensions have not been answered. We haven't. I don't think we will, even with AI at our disposal.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably just another dimensions.
Or open up other dimensions of experiencing art. And that's kind of the future now, what AI would allow us to experience, how we will experience art, how we will experience performance, right? Will the machine be able to embody what we embody? Okay. Will there be in the near future performance art festivals of AI or our own avatars, right? And
Yeah.
maybe so. Maybe, but then we will be dealing. I'm not saying it is wrong or bad, or I'm just saying that it presents itself, and I hope it does. We can see it, witness it, and see how it develops, and how it evolves, and how it contributes to our own understanding of ourselves as humans. Yeah. Mm.
What keeps you hopeful as an artist?
What keeps me hopeful as an artist is what keeps me hopeful as a human being, as a person, discovering, living, experiencing, and I'm talking about the full spectrum of good and bad and whatever is in between, this life that I've been given, because my art is related closely to this very um, personal experience, and I think it's everyone's, right? And the artists, we all experience the world differently, and that's what makes us also different in terms of our own creations, in terms of our art and how we produce it, etc. So, what gives me hope, and I was thinking about that idea, not exactly in the same question, but a few days ago, I was again in a cloud of like, okay, what do I have to do? I have to revise this. I have to do that. Then I saw this man in the streets with a dog, and how, and I, kind of, the man and the dog were coming towards me, and I was going in the other direction. And the moment that we crossed and we kind of brushed, the air, I felt the heaviness of my own thinking, this very heavy thoughts that I was carrying, and the lightness of this man and the dog, and the happiness and love with which, he was attending to the dog. And I said, why am I putting myself into this muddy, cloudy state of mind when it could be better? And it's always better, So that it hit me there, that I was the one walking, like, I don't know, just some things that were happening in my head. And then this wasn't totally happy with the dog, and the animal just came close by me, and just with such lightness in his demeanor, the way, and the dog was also happy, I think. So after that, I said, oh, wait, So suddenly things started to just dissipate. And I ended up at a ice cream parlor, just having a cone of ice cream, vanilla ice cream, my favorite. So I said, well, life is this. Life is having this moment, tasting this vanilla flavored ice cream cone. Why not? So, yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful answer.
The hope. The hope. The hope. In Spanish it's a name. There's a word, esperanza, but it's also a name. Hope. Yeah. And hope. Esperanza made me think of many. There's a project that had many iterations that I called Esperanza. Hope.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. 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 There was one I did in Berlin and the other two in this part of the world. Yeah. Esperanza, hope. Yeah. Thanks you for allowing me to remember that.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
And the way you shared the experience, we almost felt, at least I felt, I think what you felt while walking past that man with the dog.
Thank you. Thank you so much, for the opportunity to talk with you both.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey and insights with us today. It's been a real pleasure, and for sure our listeners will take away a lot